Welcome, everybody, to this episode with Linda Romano and myself, Mike Reynolds. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a conflict, a conflict resolution method that was practiced and created by the ancient Hawaiian people. And this is called Ho'oponopono. And we're going to dive deep into what it is, how it's practiced today, and how we might take some of those principles and put them into our life as we deal and manage with conflict in our relationships and in the world today. So, Grandma, what is Ho'oponopono today? Like, what does that mean? What is it?
Well, Ho'oponopono is, like you said, an ancient Hawaiian, actually spiritual practice that was passed down through the kahunas. And this was a sacred secret that was passed down from the kahunas to the kahunas. Eventually, this secret sacred practice became knowledge to everybody through a Dr. Ihali Kalala, Dr. Hugh Lin. And Dr. Hugh Lin was a psychologist. He's passed away now. But how it became known to us was through this amazing thing that happened at the Hawaii State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. So this hospital housed violent criminals, rapists, murderers, people like that. And of course, it wasn't a pleasant place to work. So they had a very hard time keeping employees, as you can imagine. There was a lot of fear, a lot of violence. Nobody was getting any better. They were to their wits' end, and the administrator heard about this Dr. Hugh Lin and the type of practice that he was doing and how it was helping people. So they contacted him and said, "Would you like to come and work for us?" And he said, "Well, I will under one condition. I'm not going to see any of the patients, but I want a private office and I will review their charts." Okay, that's fine. So what he did was, he did just that, and he practiced the ancient or spiritual art of forgiveness called Ho'oponopono. So what he did was basically, Ho'oponopono has 3 elements. And there's 3 phrases that are said in this practice. The first one is, "I am sorry." The second one is, "Please forgive me." And the third one is, "I love you." So I listened to a video of Dr. Hugh Lin, and he said what was going on in the hospital was there was a lot of craziness, a lot of, people acting silly and crazy. So Ho'oponopono says that what aspect of it is of me is it that is happening outside of me? He took on all of their challenges. He took on their illness. He took on everything upon himself. And he said, if I work on the data or the programming and see in me the other person, I can erase that experience of you, then you can't be that way any longer. So through this practice of, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you," and going to the feeling place of that, he read each chart. And what happened was miraculous. Each person started getting better. Within 2 years, almost everybody was better. Within 4 years, the whole hospital closed because one after the other, people were getting better. So he describes this practice as cleaning memories, cleaning data, because our reality, our experiences, our creation, they are part of our collective consciousness. So, okay, so think about it this way. What is the collective consciousness of the planet, of the world, of the people of the world? It's basically made up of their thoughts, of their memories, of their belief systems, acted out. Okay, that is the collective consciousness. What they believe happens, it occurs. That is what all this stuff that's happening in the world right now is all about. So if you can clean those, you can call them illusions, because they're not really real. They're projections from the screen of life, basically. So if you can clean those, then the person can go to zero. And when they go to zero, that means that they are in alignment with the oneness. They're in alignment with God. They are back to their divinity. And through that place of divinity, they become balanced. They become a non-personal benevolence, non-personal benevolence. And the next level of unfoldment and consciousness handles the challenges. So the three aspects of Ho'oponopono, which are I am sorry, please forgive me, I love you. The first one, I am sorry, is about repentance. The second one is about forgiveness, of course. The third one is I love you, and that's the factor that creates transmutation and allows the divinity to enter within. Because at our essence, we are the divine, but we have all this stuff, all these memories and all these false things going on. So then, therefore, it heals at a spiritual level, mental level, and a physical level. So basically what Dr. Hugh Lin was doing was remotely healing these people by taking full responsibility for their behaviors and their things. He was able to, in turn, get to that zero place, and they became healed. So what's really cool is that once you get to that next level of consciousness, then all of your challenges they become erased. They just work out. They just kind of dissolve. And that goes for health, goes for any aspect of your life. It could be financial, it could be physical, mental, emotional, all of those things. Once you get to that place, then God can do through you what you as a human doing cannot do. So, Michael, you were telling me some interesting things about ancient Hawaii, some of the ancient, which I wasn't aware of, but I would like to learn more about some of the ancient Hawaiian practices and how they used it for resolution of conflict.
Yeah, and the more that you're talking about Ho'oponopono, because this is something that I learned a long time ago in university as we studied conflict resolution. And it was something we didn't study very much of.
Uh-huh.
The more that you're talking about Ho'oponopono, the more that I'm realizing what I was thinking of is something completely different.
Oh, okay.
But but I have questions about what you're saying. So the first thing I want to ask you is is I just want to clarify. So this Dr. Hugh Lin was meeting with these criminals who were in a mental hospital. Is that right?
The mental hospital was called Hawaii State Hospital. It was a hospital for the criminally insane, and he never saw any of the patients. He only looked at their charts. So everything that was done remotely from his office at the hospital.
Over the phone?
No, he didn't talk to them. He looked at their charts, read their history, read what they were going through, and he took on those things for himself, and he asked himself the question, what aspect of me is there that I am experiencing this in my reality right now? And so therefore he took it on as his own, even though so basically he was standing in proxy for these people.
And then the people just felt it.
And the people felt it and started feeling better. So now what we're talking about, right, is quantum physics. We're talking about energy fields. We're talking about vibration, healing vibrations, which can shift people's consciousness, which can actually, okay, so I'll give an example. You and I, and I'm sure everybody's heard about these studies of groups of people who, okay, we're going to do an experiment. Everybody's going to pray at the same time, for this city at this certain time for a certain amount of time. And then we're going to study it. Was there any effect? And then what happens is crime rate goes down and all these things happen as a result. It's because of the vibrational energy that they were giving off in mass, large number of people praying at the same time has a lot of power. Well, if you want to learn more about ancient practices, mystical practices, and how it parallels with quantum physics, you can read the book called The Tao of Physics. Well, this study was extensive study by a physicist, completely scientist, that he wasn't, didn't believe in God or any of those things, but he started realizing that the ancient spiritual practices of mysticism paralleled quantum physics. And so he goes bit by bit into, Buddhism and Taoism and Zen and all these different practices. And it really comes down to the core of every religion without the dogma, but the core is love and all these other same principles that are in common with all faiths, that they're all in alignment with what we've learned in quantum physics. So we're talking about energy fields, we're talking about consciousness. So here's the thing. If we are consciousness, then we're all connected as one, truly. There's actually no separation. That is only, we think that because we see a solid body, but our body isn't even solid. It's mostly space. So what we see with our eyes, don't believe your lying eyes, it's not reality at the quantum level. So if we're all connected and everything is energy, which it is, that's what science tells us, then if we raise our energy in love, forgiveness, then we can shift probably anything. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it sounds like, yeah, no, that answers my question. My second question was, you had mentioned something about, earlier you said this term. I'm having a hard time remembering what it was. I should have wrote it down. But so when it comes to the Ho'oponopono today, is it still practiced?
Very much so. There's many, many people in the world that practice Ho'oponopono. There's been many books written about it. I don't think he's a doctor. Joe Vitale wrote a book called Zero Limits that kind of opened up the door for common knowledge about, he had heard about Dr. Hugh Lin, the story. He persisted until he got in touch with him, got the whole story from him, and they started sort of doing talks and spreading it around and getting it out there. And then he wrote a book. Joe Vitale wrote a book called Zero Limits. That book has a lot of the description of Ho'oponopono. It's really about full and absolute responsibility for your life. Now, there's having full responsibility for your life, and then there's having full responsibility for your life. When I'm talking about it from the standpoint of the practice of Ho'oponopono, you're taking on and taking responsibility for everything that happens in your life, whether it's good or bad. It is an aspect of you. This is not to beat you up. This is not to make yourself feel bad about yourself. This is because we're all connected in consciousness and we all have all this stuff, you know? So if you bring the practice now to worldwide situations, let's take it from the micro to the macro, and we'll go into world situations. People have issues with politicians, laws that are being made, the environment of the planet. It goes on and on. So, what is it in us that is creating that? So, our perceptions create our reality, Michael. It's a fact. That's science. The collective consciousness is an accumulation of thoughts and perceptions. So what's happening in the collective is a reflection of some aspect of myself, yourself, or everybody else's self. As much as I don't like to admit that the environmental situation, the political situation, and all the other things I don't like are a reflection of some aspect of me, in reality they are. And so I'm grateful to know this, because on a personal level, this is something I can clean. I can clean those aspects of myself. I can forgive and love them into non-existence so that the only divinity can shine through.
That reminds me of these. So I was watching this documentary, and there's like all these people who have had near death experiences where they actually did die and came back, resuscitated. And a lot of them had recollection of what that experience was like on the other side. And they all describe, the ones who had, some of them have had negative experiences, but most of them had positive experiences. And they all describe that positive experience as them seeing God and experiencing just this light. And it wasn't like a physical light to the eyes, it was a light of just absolute love and goodness and forgiveness and compassion and peace.
That's right.
And one of the men who had this experience, it's probably been decades since he had the experience, but he was recounting it, and he said that he came back to his body and woke up, and he was in the hospital, and his wife was next to him. His wife was just like tripping out because she thought he was dead. And he looks at her and he says, the only words he could say is, "It's all love. It's just a giant ocean of love. And you just have to," what did he say? You just have to like swim in it, or you just have to welcome it, or just open yourself to it. And it hit me because that is so true. Like, when we pass beyond the veil of this life, like, we will see that God is in everything, and that love encompasses the universe. And it will be so apparent. But what's so fascinating is that we're in this state where we have a veil, and we're in this body that consists of of matter and like elements that create hormonal balances and experiences and perceptions, and we're constantly like in this state where we're in this body, but this body is also connected to this sort of energetic plane that we can't see, but we can sense.
Right.
And there's this energetic plane, and on that plane, there is this high frequency of that love and that forgiveness and that peace. And that's where a lot of our intuitions come from.
Mm-hmm.
I would say all of them. And then on the opposite side of the plane, we have this low frequency of like fear and lust, and we feel like afraid and sort of darkness. And we're kind of in this position where, because we're separated in our senses from completely being engulfed in the experience of being in that light that these people see when they pass, we kind of have this like decision every day that we can make to like either jump into that ocean of love or not. And it's either we choose to see that ocean and welcome it and like be a part of it, tap into it, or not. That's really what it is. And when we do tap into it, we find that there's no lack. There's just abundance. There's no limitations. There's no limit or end. Like there's no end to the ways that we can love people. And there's just creation and possibilities and healing and happiness and joy. So I think it's fascinating when we're talking about this stuff too, is like, that's what repentance is all about, is like choosing to fall into that ocean, is choosing to stop limiting ourselves and to open ourselves to the abundance of love that always and will forever exist, and there's no lack, and it's always there for us to sort of grab and be a part of and contribute to.
That's right. Tap into and contribute to. I like that. I don't know if it was a near-death experience, but just want to mention it. I think I've told you about this before. So maybe about 12 years ago or something like that, I laid down on the bed. It was during the day. I closed my eyes. I was not asleep. I was very aware of what was going on around me. As soon as I closed my eyes, I sensed that I went out of my body and I was in a dark tunnel. It was completely black. But I wasn't afraid. I felt kind of like I was floating, but I had no sense I had a body. I was just there. And I felt the most extraordinary love I've ever experienced. It's indescribable with regards to putting it into words in a human form. And I was just being bathed in this love. And the thought came to me, I don't want to leave here. And as soon as I thought that, I went back in my body and I woke up. So I don't know what it was. I don't know if my heart stopped temporarily. It didn't pass away all the way or what it was, but it's similar to some things other people have experienced when they had a near-death experience, but it was I don't know how long it lasted. It seemed like a second, but maybe it was longer. I don't know. But it was something that you never forget. And I have felt that love. And I know for a fact that it's there. It's just an incredible. And you talked about tapping into that love. So because we're so sensory oriented, right? One of the ways we can really tap into God, connect with God, is by closing our eyes, disconnecting from our senses as much as possible, and meditate and just close our eyes and focus on our breath. And just keep bringing yourself back to your breath, because it's in the silence, when we cut off the sensoriness, try to sit in a quiet place, then we can hear the still small voice, or feel it, or be impacted by it, or receive inspirations from it. There's too much noise. We don't hear it, but it's always broadcasting. So basically what we're doing is we're turning our channel to that frequency when we meditate. And this is a kind of a meditation. And on YouTube, there are videos that have Ho'oponopono meditations, Ho'oponopono music. Somebody created a meditation with Dr. Hugh Lin's voice with binaural beats music in the background. So there's all kinds of things you can tap into. If anybody is interested in exploring this ancient Hawaiian spiritual practice.
What you said reminded me of one of the experiences too that one of these people had, and he said that when it was interesting because he was one of those people that had a bad experience out of body, and it turned good. He said he was surrounded by darkness, and that there is these dark beings that weren't like devil looking, but they would look like people, but they were dark people, and they were mean, like in their spirit, and they were yelling at him and saying, keep walking, keep walking. He was just walking in this endless darkness. And they say, keep moving. And then they started being violent with him and pushing him around. And then he said he was like just completely horrified, and he had this thought, and he remembered when he was a little boy going to church, and he remembered seeing about Jesus. And so he cried out and yelled out, and he said, Jesus, if you exist, this is the time I need you. Please help me if you're there. And instantly he was picked up by Jesus and just started shooting up, going like 100 miles, 200 miles an hour into this light. And he was just hanging on to Jesus. And he just couldn't think of anything except he just didn't want to let go. He was afraid he was gonna fall back into that darkness. And Jesus took him all the way up to some place, and there's a bunch of light. He felt just this love everywhere, and there's these people everywhere that were full of light. And he thought them to be angels, like they didn't have wings, but he thought them to be angels. And he's standing there with Jesus, and Jesus says, these people here want to show you some things about your life. And you got this like flashback rewind of his whole life up to that point. And he saw some of the decisions that he had made that in relationships with his children and his wife and things like that. And he saw that these angels were like sad at his decisions. And he said, I feel so, he said that when he saw that, he started crying, and he was like, I don't belong here. Like, get me out of here. I don't belong here. I don't want to be here. Like, this is a mistake. I shouldn't be here with you guys. And Jesus looked at him and said, we don't make mistakes. And he said, and he just felt this super overwhelming love. And Jesus told him, I need you to go back now. And he said, oh, but Jesus, like, I have like so many questions. And he was like, okay, what are your questions? And he said he just asked Jesus questions forever. Like, literally, like, hundreds and hundreds of questions. And Jesus just answered all of them. And then he said, at the end of it, he was like, okay, I don't have any more questions. He's like, I'm ready to go to heaven. And Jesus is like, it's not time for you to go to heaven yet. He said, I need you to go back. And he said, oh, I don't want to go back. Like, what am I going to do over there? Like, this is so much better. And he said, Jesus tells him, he said, I want you to go back, and I want you to love the people that you're with. And he says, you want me to love them? He said, the world's a horrible place. Like, have you seen it? Like, what's that even going to do? Like, I feel like I'd be better off here. Like he said, he's like, that's not going to work. And Jesus said, it's going to work. And he said, no, how is that going to work? The world's a horrible place. And Jesus said, it's going to work. It's the Father's plan. It's going to work. And I need you to go back. And I just need you to love the people that you're with. And he said, eventually he was like, okay, I'll go back. So he went back, and then that was the guy who, when he woke up to his wife in the hospital, he said, it's all love. And he went through some pretty major trials after that in his life. But he said, like, ever since then, his whole like paradigm shifted. And I love that story because it just reminds me of how sweet Jesus is, and how much God loves us. And even when we make mistakes, like, he's so patient, and he wants to forgive us, and he wants us to get better at loving and to learn how to love the way that he loves. And I feel like this life is the perfect place, the way that it's set up for us, the perfect place to do that. And Ho'oponopono is just just a little example to me of like what the love of God is, taking upon yourself other people's griefs and things so that they can heal. And that's what Jesus does for us. And I just love that. And those are my last thoughts. And I just want to ask you, did you have any other last thoughts before we close, Grandma?
I love the story you just told. I know it's true. I have felt that love. It's just this learning more about Ho'oponopono has been a really great reminder for me to go deeper in my love, especially for the things I don't like. It's easy to love that which you like. It's hard. It's a whole different story to love what you don't like. So I'm going to take a look at that, and I'm going to practice this. And I'm happy to know about it. And I'm very happy to have you as my grandson who understands these things and takes them to heart. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too. And thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode where we talked a lot about love and Ho'oponopono. And we will see you next week. Until then, take care and Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating. God bless. Bye-bye for
Bye.
now.